The Spin-off Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Merrill. Join one of the most iconic names in wealth management, Merrill. You'll be part of a dynamic team of advisors and specialists working hard every day to grow their clients' wealth. And with the support of best-in-class research, advanced digital tools, and the resources of a global institution, it's truly an opportunity you can be bullish about. Learn more at careers.bankofamerica.com. Copyright 2024, Bank of America Corporation.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by SparkLab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about SparkLab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to Business is Boring. One of the biggest questions business leaders are asking today is, how do I get started with AI? Like with most things, a lot of it comes down to having a plan and knowing that the better the inputs, the better the outputs. That's what Edmundo Ortega is here to help with. He's an AI educator at Section, the new US business education and upskilling platform, who's here in New Zealand to take a course on AI prompting and to present at the Spark Accelerate Summit to help business leaders take the right first steps into incorporating and benefiting from AI in their business. Edmundo is a seasoned entrepreneur and strategist with a track record of driving transformative change in the tech industry. And today, he joins us to talk about his journey, his views on the future of tech, and the lessons he's learned along the way. Tanakwe, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Simon.
Hey, so you've built an amazing career in tech. Tell us about how you first got interested in the space.
Well, I'm old.
No!
I'm 53 in human years, and I'm 179 in tech years. So I've been around for a long time. I went to engineering school. I got a degree in aerospace engineering, and then I pivoted into design. So here's a little bit of art and a little bit of science. And the timing was right at that moment to basically develop what was going to become the web. So this was 1996, and I was in graduate school, and I had a friend, and we said, hey, this website thing, this internet thing is really taking off. We should start an agency and, make some money off of this. We were like, at that time, monkeys with laptops could have made money, and that's basically what we were. We were young, we were inexperienced, but we had a lot of energy, and so we just went at it. And so we were in there at the right time, and we're designing some of the first websites in the world. We started in our own agency, and grew that agency up to be a player with many of the top agencies at the time, who were the first digital agencies that were arriving. So we were eating the lunch of advertising agencies, which were the previous generations or the previous era's version of how you got your message out to the world, right? But when the web came along, everything changed. And so we took advantage of that moment to teach ourselves how to do digital and teach the world, because at the time there was no playbook for how that worked. So that started my career. And then for the next 20, 25 years, really, that's really what I did, was in one shape or another, build digital products and build digital experiences. And, now in the present day, there is another paradigm change that's happening, which is being driven by AI. And so we've had this over the years, right? From the very early days of computers with punch cards, this is how we talk to computers. And then we got green screens like they probably still have at the airport. And then we got the Mac, the graphical user interface. And each one of these changes was a change in how we communicated with machines. Then you got mobile, and suddenly we could take the internet with us anywhere. And now you have AI, and AI is really just another evolution in that same trend. But now you can talk to a computer in your own language. So whereas before you needed a programming language, now the programming language is English or French or German. So like any programming language, you have to learn how to code in that language. And we happen to know English already. So we come out of the womb, so to speak, as adept or able to be able to communicate with AI. The problem is that English is an awful programming language. It has tons of ambiguity and things like that. It's got a very large syntax. And so it's very easy to communicate badly with the AI and give it too much information or too little information. And that's like a garbage in, garbage out problem. And so a lot of the teaching that I'm doing now at Section is really around teaching people how to form those communications with AI, how to prompt properly. It's not difficult, but if you don't know how to do it, then you can get really bad results as you interact with the machines.
Yeah, that's so cool. And across the journey, like when there's these new media, these new ways of storytelling, there have been a whole bunch of changes in how not only you interact with technology, right, but how you communicate effectively for each medium. And you've been a big advocate along the way of the role of brand and storytelling and design in this kind of stuff, right? Not just kind of features and benefits and technology. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of the opportunity that you saw and how you've helped to be an advocate for that?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if I've thought about that too much before, but I do believe for myself that storytelling is essential in business because business is about transactions at the end of the day. Every business is in business to make money. And to make money, you have to have a buyer. And behind that buyer is a human being somewhere along the line. That person wants to feel good about the purchase they're making. It's hard to part with money, right? I mean, we're getting down to really fundamental ideas here, but and so we see, maybe obliquely sometimes, that the best companies also happen to be the best storytellers. I'm thinking about Apple, right? And so being able to feel good about that purchase, being able to tell a story about why you should buy this thing, being able to communicate from human to human is essential. And everything else is something that gets in the way, right? Media gets in the way, but it also is a channel. So I think that's the trick, right? How do we keep our humanity? How do we connect with people on a human level through these complicated channels that oftentimes really tend to sand down the message and make it much more about features and benefits when it's really about the life you want to lead and the happiness you want to find, either in business or in your personal life.
Yeah, and in this work with agencies and with kind of communication and design, often it seems to be like it's kind of an interpretation game, right? So you take the facts and then you interpret it or put it into a way that, can get across to people on the other side of things. And that seems to be a thread through a lot of the work you've done. And your most recent venture, Machine and Partners, seems to be maybe a continuation of that as you're helping to be the interpreter between business and these amazing new tools.
Yeah, I left my last job and started working as a product strategy consultant. And all anybody was asking me about was AI. What I quickly realized was that the problem wasn't how do I build AI stuff? It was more, what do I build? And that is a strategic question, not a technology question, right? Many companies, though, see AI as a technology, and therefore it lives in the purview of the technologists. So they say, hey, CTO, build cool stuff with AI for our company. And the CTO, in many times, does not have a good handle on the strategy of the business and builds the wrong thing. So this can be an expensive mistake that companies make. So Machine and Partners is really about helping companies build the right thing. And it's about understanding their business. It's about understanding what's going to move the needle and actually deciding not to do certain things. So we're not trying to be a development agency, right? A development agency wants to build stuff. So whatever the problem is, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail, that old adage.
I love that adage.
Yeah. Well, that's, a development agency is like, well, every problem, needs a digital solution. Whereas for Machining Partners, many times the answer is don't build anything. It's not the right time. You need to wait a year or maybe the answer is like, maybe it's time to up-level your people's skills in AI versus jumping into building a big AI project. Like maybe that project won't take if your employees don't have a good handle on the potential for this technology. So that's ultimately what Machining Partners is. And it is about, making a successful business and latching onto this technology, just like in 1996, we latched on to the web and found this brand new channel, this brand new thing that we could build with to move the needle for our business. Now it feels very similar to me as an old guy, who's been through a few cycles where everyone's looking at AI and saying, oh, this is really new. What do I do with it? Right? And so I think leaders especially feel, anxiety, a little bit of fear around that question. They don't feel informed enough to make those decisions, which is why they tend to sort of push it off to the technologists. And I think that's a big mistake. So it is kind of my mission in a way to help educate, especially executives, decision makers. And it's not complicated education. It's just like, hey, you need to know the business, the basics of how this technology works, how to use it, get your hands dirty, get a feel for it. And it doesn't take much, but if you have that, you can make such better decisions on how to move forward with it in your business.
Yeah, I've heard you talk before about the top-down and the bottom-up approaches to AI projects. Can you tell us a bit about that?
If you are a business and you're asking yourself, how am I going to use AI? How am I going to drive adoption in my company if I feel that adoption is going to move the needle for the company? And what are the ways you can adopt AI, right? You can build something, you can take your products and you can transform them to be AI-enabled products such that they're more effective for your customers. You can take your own internal tools or tools that you purchase from others that are your productivity tools, and you can buy AI-empowered versions of those. Or you can take your employees and you can develop their skills with AI. So you can either go top down and you say, hey, I'm going to assemble a tiger team of my best people. We're going to identify the projects that seem to have the most potential for our company, and we're going to, build something there or decide what to build, right? That's the top-down approach. That's great. It's a good exercise to go through, and you should be smart about how you make those decisions, what you deem as viable or valuable. But the other way to do it that I think is underappreciated and not used enough is the bottoms-up approach, where you say, I'm going to educate my whole company on the use of AI. And what happens when you do that is you get hundreds, thousands, however many employees you have, you get all these individual experiences with AI where they start to learn, oh, I see what I can do with this. I can find some valuable use cases that will accelerate my productivity personally. Now, at first, this probably isn't going to ladder up to overall productivity gains for the company. But I think over time what happens is a few people emerge from that pool of employees as your gurus. They're the ones that really latch onto this, who really take it seriously and really take the time to find the use cases that are going to drive productivity in their job. And so you'll have in every function, right, in marketing, in sales, in data analysis, in finance, you'll have one of these people who's like, oh yeah, now I can do my data analysis with AI instead of like sitting there for hours, like dragging my, brain through these spreadsheets. I can use AI, I can use some tool like Julius, or your writers in your marketing department might be using a tool or just using ChatGPT to write the first drafts of their blog posts or content pieces. It doesn't mean AI is going to do everything for you, but it certainly can speed up the process to help you do the things that you're good at, to help you, deliver value where it matters and not where it doesn't matter in all the drudge work and the hard parts of your job.
Like it's kind of magic, right? Like you can spend your time, in that example you say of the blog post. If you go, hey, write a draft of a blog about X, you then spend your time going, well, how do I refine it and how do I make sure it's accurate to what I know our kind of customers need and what's relevant to our company goals. And being able to refine and use your expertise is like a bit of a superpower. Doing the drudge work is not what anyone enjoys in work, right?
No way. No. Yeah, like the blog post is a great example because I know a lot of people who are writers, who are creative, who have used AI tools, and they always come away disappointed, right? They say, I'm a great writer, and then so they want to compare their skills against the AI, and so they say, hey, AI, write a blog post about blah. And the AI writes some really generic, not very good blog post. So as an expert writer, you look at that and you say, oh, well, AI is bad. AI sucks. If you learn how to use AI, though, you would never ask it to do such a general task. The nature of especially generative AI is that it's built on all of human knowledge. So if you ask a very general question, you get a very general answer that is kind of a milquetoast, middle of the road kind of answer. It's almost by design. But if you change your request and you give it the context and the background that you care about, that you value, where you say, I'm a blog post writer and I care about the following things and my style is like this and I hate it when this happens and I love it when this happens in my writing. Now write the blog post. So giving it all that extra background and extra information allows the AI to filter out all the other things that are part of its general knowledge and concentrate on the parts that you care about. And then it writes a much better blog post, right? And then you start from there and you're like, okay, this is much more aligned with my values and what I care about.
It feels like there's this real moment here where, like you said, with, computers or the internet, there's like a new literacy moment that has to happen now, right? And like you say, not everyone is going to be the most computer literate, but having people who are super good with it means everyone around them gets lifted up. And it feels like a real parallel with AI where you can hear someone saying that they've done something that's, a big old time suck of a job. And you can jump in and go, hey, have you thought about doing this, mate?
I've seen it so many times with my clients where you do the general literacy for the whole team. You get a couple people that become your gurus. The gurus then go out and do the work, the hard work of applying the technology to their use cases. And then they are writing blog posts 3 times faster than their colleague. And so the colleague looks over the, cubicle wall and says, how are you getting all this stuff done so quickly? And the person says, oh, I'm using AI to do it. Let me show you how. And that's how those productivity gains, I think, start to take hold.
That's so cool. We'll be back in a moment with Edmundo to talk about his work with Section and some tips for how you can improve your prompting.
What's up? It's me, Lisa. Bose Ultra Open Earbuds are one of my favorites. As a musician, sound is the most important part of the process. I've been so busy and always on the move, so if I can keep my music with me wherever I go, that would keep the inspiration going. The look of the Ultra Open Earbuds remind me of ear cups, so I would style it like an accessory. Check out Bose.com for more.
Big news! The Burger King Whopper lineup just got bigger. Now featuring the $1 Million Whopper Contest Top 3. There's something for street corn stands, bourbon barbecue fans, and fried pickle lovers. You gotta try them. You rule your season today at BK. Have it your way. You rule. Participating U.S. restaurants. Limited time only while supplies last.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week deals now.
Hoki mai anō. Welcome back to Business is Boring, where we're with Edmundo Ortega. So tell us about your work in education and helping to kind of like upskill people with this work, as you've got a really cool course around better prompting with Section.
Yeah, so I am the former head of product at Section. That's how I have a connection with that company. Section was originally founded to try to disrupt the MBA, essentially. But over time, we realized that it's really a different product that it's delivering, which is upskilling people who are already in business who don't have time to stop and go educate themselves in some ivory tower, but really want practical information they can use to get the job done at a higher level, full stop. And AI now is part of that. It's something that's really something that everyone's interested in because of all the hype that's out there. So the first question is like, how do you get started with AI from a standstill? And really the easiest way is with a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Microsoft Copilot. They're built to be easy to use for average people. As a matter of fact, when OpenAI launched ChatGPT 3.5, they made a big decision to just release it into the public. They had no idea what people were going to do with it, but they needed to know what they would try to do so that they could refine it to make it do that. And ChatGPT 4 is the result of that. So it was basically a big experiment on us, the consumer, to drive that business. Well, as it turns out, the core of using AI for most consumers is in prompting. And prompting is just the input, right? These large language models, LLMs, they're in a sense simple. Text goes in and text comes out. The text that goes in is your prompt, and the text that comes out is the result. What happens in the middle is a black box. We have no idea what's going on inside those things. It's kind of freaky. And so prompting is a bit of an art. It is just our language. We can just say whatever we want. The AI is trained on that language. It understands the relationships between ideas. And inside our language, it just so happens that there's a lot of meta information. There is logic, there is reasoning, there is emotion, and there are extra textual information, I will say, like what do things smell like? What does it feel like to fall in love? All that's in our language because we've written down what our experience in the world is like for thousands of years. And we just gave the AI all that information to read. And when it read it, it is able to extract more than just the textual information, but all this kind of between the lines type of stuff because of the relationship between all the ideas that are in there. So that's pretty mind-blowing. So when it comes time to communicate with the AI, you need to understand how to control that input in a way to give you the output that you're going to be satisfied with. And what we've discovered through the last really just, year, 2 years of playing with this technology is various techniques in prompting that make that possible. Now, it's not like an overstatement to say that this is all still being figured out. Every single day, a new paper comes out from some institution that is some technique, some prompting technique to manipulate an LLM to make it do what you want. But the basics have been known for a long time. And so at Section, we have a prompting course. It has a basic framework. It's really, really simple, 6 blocks. And you can use these blocks like Legos to help the AI give you a better response. And the fundamental elements of these blocks are, number 1, the task. What do you want the LLM to do? And number 2, the context. What does the LLM need to know in order to do a good job at that task? And then there are other things you can add on to that.
It's so cool. And I love the way you mentioned the kind of prompt tricks or, special things you can do to add them. Asking things like, explain it like you would to a 12-year-old, or you're a, cynical advertising writer who you can do all kinds of things and get remarkably different outcomes, right?
Yeah, I have a little demo that I do all the time that is like an example of this framework where I say, first, I bring up ChatGPT and I say, explain the theory of relativity. And then it just goes on and on with all this technical jargon about space and time and stuff. And that is an answer. It is a relatively general answer, but it's over my head. Like, I don't have an astrophysics training. And so I reframe the prompt and I say, now I want you to explain the theory of relativity to me as if I were a 12-year-old. But don't dumb it down so much that I don't actually understand it. Now, if you think about that, that's not that easy, right? Because making things simple usually takes away the complexity to the point where it's kind of meaningless, right? And so the AI does a spectacular job at this. I mean, it's really amazing. And I'll add some stuff onto the prompt, like stop at each concept and ask me if I understand. And when it does that, it might say, okay, let's talk about, relative motion, and it'll sort of explain it. And it'll use analogies that are easier to get your head around versus mathematical language. And then it'll stop and it'll say, do you understand that? And I'll say, no, I don't understand. Can we talk about this more? And then you can have a conversation with the AI where it effectively becomes a tutor to you to help you understand the theory of relativity. This is amazingly powerful, right? 5 years ago, you would buy an online course, or you'd buy a book, or, you'd watch a million YouTube videos, which were non-interactive, one way, one direction learning platforms. And here you have an interactive tutor that goes at your pace, answers any questions you might have, and it is like hyper-personalized learning on the theory of relativity. And that's just one narrow use case of the millions of others that are possible.
Yeah, it's totally amazing, hey, for the future of learning languages, or like you say with science, anything that does require, to ask a question, you might have to go 15 questions down to actually get to work out what you don't understand.
Yeah.
And that kind of personalized, available, patient, and that gets to know you and what you do and don't know. It's kind of magic for the future of education and passing things on, right? Something I love about, it's still early days in a lot of this stuff. My day job is to write brand strategies and strategies for new ideas. So often there's a big area of like, well, we're writing about something that isn't in common use or understanding now. I wonder if this way of communicating it will help people understand it. And that's been very hard to test in the past. But now with things like ChatGPT, you can just plonk your words in and say, what do you think this means? Describe it back to me in a way that like a normal person reading it would understand this. And if it doesn't tell me back what we're trying to say, I know it's not right. And so there's all kinds of kind of reverse engineering you can do, as well as the kind of, searching for things.
Yep. Yeah, the role of the critic, that's really, really a powerful one, right? If you have a big project and you are going to present this project to someone, you can give the project to the AI and say, okay, now AI, you pretend to be my boss or the board of my company or, someone, any role you can think of that might be the audience of that. And, I'll tell you some information about this critic and who they are and what they care about. Now read my presentation or whatever my thing is and, give me feedback, critical feedback. And the AI typically does a pretty good job at that.
And the closer you are to it, the harder it can be to see the gaps, right?
100%. So having this like thought partner, right? Someone who is non-judgmental, right? Doesn't have their own opinions, but can be very, and so therefore can be very impartial, but also really sharp. Cover your holes.
I wonder if it's going to train us to be better at taking feedback. It can be very direct and there's no loss of face.
Yeah,
it's not easy for us.
That's a good point. I wonder. I mean, I think we're at the very beginning. We're 2 years in really to this technology, and who knows what's going to happen next. I mean, honestly, like that's why with my clients, I often don't encourage them to make long-term plans on the technology. Like don't embark on a 12-month-long project, technology project at least. Embark on a 2-year, 5-year AI strategy, 100%. Yes, definitely do that. But you don't know what's going to happen next year. It's moving really, really fast.
And so these kind of, principles for good engagement with prompt writing and the end of 2024. Who knows what it is in another 6 months? Your point is so true. So, you really want to be really clear about the goal of what you're doing. You want to give it adequate context so it can be specific to your use cases. What are some other kind of general principles for getting great results?
A couple things are boundaries. So the context that you give it is important to help, like I said, narrow down the task so that it meets your criteria, right? But then boundaries about what you don't want it to do is also really important. And this is the kind of thing that you iteratively discover as you work with the tool. So it might come back with something that you don't like, and you would say, okay, let's try that again, but this time don't do that, right? You might also, as far as the roles go, you might say, hey, do this again, but now do it pretending to be this other person, or pretend you're a data expert, or pretend you're an art critic, or pretend you're whatever. And that is so important to the AI to recontextualize the assignment. So those kinds of things can be powerful. I think also there is a downside to AI, or a weakness in this idea of hallucinations. This is like a much bigger topic, but essentially the AI all it does is hallucinate. It's just that 95% of the time it hallucinates correctly, right? It is how the thing is built. But as an end user, when you see incorrect hallucination, it's very off-putting because we're used to a more logic-oriented, true, false kind of world.
Yeah, and it's equally confident whether it's right or wrong. And
that's
exactly disconcerting.
Yeah, so it's really hard to tell when it's doing it, right? So this is why, you have to kind of like be aware that there are hallucinations, not be too discouraged by it, and learn how to double check the work of the AI to make sure that, it's doing a good job. And this has really nipped people in the butt. Like in the U.S., there's a really famous case of a lawyer who put together an argument, submitted it to a judge, and he had case law that was completely fabricated by the AI because he told it to fabricate it, essentially. But it was really that was like showing his lack of experience using AI more than anything else.
Yeah, and we're already seeing there more of the main models in use are providing links to sources, and there's a little bit more of that. It's not as black box, right? A little bit more of a link back to where the basis of things are, which is reassuring for now.
Yeah, that's really that's called multimodal system. The LLM, in its purest sense, cannot check its work. It doesn't have any facts stored in its knowledge base. It has a lot of semantic information. So it understands the meaning of things. It understands the relationships between ideas. So, for example, I can only use, I'm thinking of an American one, but I think it's famous enough. But Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War. There's lots and lots of stuff around those two ideas and how they're connected in many, many ways, right? But if you start to get really narrow in your focus, where there isn't a lot of information about those ideas, or if the ideas are very separated, the planet Mars and Edith Wharton, there's nothing really connecting those two. But if you ask an AI to start making connections, it will. Now, it's going to make up some pretty weird connections. Some of those might be brilliant. Right, it be interpreting Edith Wharton's work and thinking about sort of planetary movements, and there's finding some kind of graduate level connection between the stars and this author. It's like these things are kind of new. This fact checking piece is a layer on top of the LLM that the companies like OpenAI and Claude are adding to the mix through regular programming, right? You ask a question and it says, I'm going to look at that question. The LLM is actually going to analyze your question and ask itself, can I do a better job answering this from my general knowledge base, or would I have to go to the web to answer this question effectively? So it does a little bit of orchestration on its side, and then it chooses what to do. And that's that's agentic behavior, what we call it's an agent, because the agent is the orchestrator and it's deciding, hey, I have some tools that I can use to answer this question effectively. Maybe the tool is writing Python code. Maybe you've asked me a question that's kind of a mathematical question, and I need to write code in order to answer that question because an LLM has no ability to do any math or anything like that on its own. But it does have the ability to recognize that it's a math question you're asking, and therefore, coordinating the answer by using another tool at its disposal.
And tell us about the work that you're here in New Zealand to do with the Spark Accelerate Summit. And so you're giving a keynote. You're here also to do the section course on the prompt engineering for people wanting to become more adept, but also doing some thought leadership with kind of business leaders.
Yeah, so I'm doing a keynote at the event, I think on Wednesday, and it's about helping leaders make good decisions with AI, helping them get started with AI in a way that is sensible. There's many ways you can use the technology. You can do dumb things with it. You can do smart things with it. It's really hard to know which is which sometimes. So I have a framework that I'm offering, based on my own experience and years of doing this, that I think is effective in helping people make those decisions. It's pretty basic. It's really just practical advice for executives around getting started with AI. But I really love what Spark is doing, frankly. I love that they have recognized that AI is going to be an important paradigm-shifting technological force in the future. And they're looking at the country of New Zealand, and they're realizing that, New Zealand is not performing from a productivity point of view on par with other OECD economies. And here they see an opportunity. It's like maybe we can jump over that problem by embracing AI and using it in a way that it is designed for, which is really about productivity enhancement. And so, there's studies. I think Microsoft did a big study that showed that 70% of people in New Zealand, leaders, are interested in AI, and at the same time, 70% of leaders have no plans to implement AI. And so, what Spark is doing, I think, which is really brilliant, is just pushing this idea of like, hey, you can get started. You need to know more information about this technology, and inviting industry leaders, small businesses too, and even individuals in to say, let's give you some materials that will help you start accelerating your understanding of the tech so that you can make good decisions for yourself and maybe drive New Zealand, forward, accelerate them faster than they would if they were waiting on their back foot and waiting for things to pan out to kind of get those numbers. And I think there are, there is a big opportunity here. I think they have studies that have shown that just for New Zealand, actually, the potential for productivity acceleration is like 2x with AI. So without AI, you'd be moving so fast, and with AI, you'd be moving twice as fast, right? And there's so many tasks that can be automated with AI. So if you think about just automation across the board in every industry, and I was just having conversations with the Spark team this morning about some of the attendees and some of the presenters who are coming to the event, who are showing off some of the things that they've been doing innovation-wise with AI. And I'm talking about I think one was a fruit company, one was a construction company. So these are not like high-tech firms that are building whiz-bang gadgets, but they are just using it in their processes to make them more productive.
Yeah, the point about productivity is so well made. I think we're very lucky the way that the models have developed, in that it's not an arms race to have the biggest data centers or the biggest AI frameworks or whatever. We're able to actually access the best-in-class products just in a API or, interacting with them. And that is so lucky for a small country like New Zealand, because we wouldn't have had the best and biggest infrastructure. But if it's just a matter of having smart ideas on other people's big infrastructure, then we're in a great position to do that from here. And I think any business that doesn't have an AI plan, it'd be like in a few years, it's going to be like not having the internet or not having computers, like it's very much talked about now like an AI-enabled business. But before long, it'll be like if you said, well, my business is actually computer-enabled and internet-enabled, like it's just the new weather, right?
Yeah, I have a friend who, this is a small version of this, but he owns a fabric store. Fabric stores in the United States got into a lot of trouble because Amazon entered the fabric store market, and people could buy fabric much cheaper through Amazon. They already had the sort of connection to Amazon. They had their Prime accounts and all this stuff. So his business was threatened. He decided that to go all in on online commerce and try to sort of differentiate from Amazon on a quality and customer service point of view, which he felt that Amazon could never touch. Other fabric stores basically said, we're going to wait this out and see what happens. They're gone now. Amazon just stayed in this business long enough to basically put hundreds of fabric stores out of business, right? But he went all in on e-commerce, and Amazon eventually said, there's no money in fabric, and they left. He and maybe 3 other companies were left standing. The other 2 also went all in on e-commerce, and so they survived, right? I think the same thing is going to happen with AI. We're going to have a bunch of people who decide to sit it out or to wait too long. And meanwhile, because the tools are so good, because the tooling for engineers is so good, 2 kids from MIT can start spinning up ideas and companies that can disrupt your company while you're sitting waiting for things to shake out, right? And by the time you've realized that, it's time to, embrace this AI thing, you're like, you're the guy that doesn't have a website, you're the guy that doesn't have an AI strategy, it'll be too late.
Yeah, it's time. And as a final thought, what will your definition or idea of success be in your work as an interpreter and educator and translator for AI and business?
I mean, I have a couple of different ways of measuring success. Like I said, I'm 53. So maybe I'm not as ambitious as I was when I was 33. I want to make a difference. Like I want to feel like I am part of what's making the world better. And that's kind of a cheesy thing to say, but I also want to do this in a way that makes me happy. And I think my point of view at this point matters. And that maybe has some hubris to it, right? But having been around as long as I have, I feel like there is a right way to do this stuff. And at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about human connection. So you can let technology get in the way of the human connection. You can automate humans out of the process, or you can let this technology enhance the human connection. I think the companies that are going to do the best are going to be the ones that enhance the human connection, that enhance what we do best as humans, that amplify our powers. We talked about the writer earlier. So everyone's afraid AI is going to steal my job. I don't think that's going to happen. I think AI is going to enhance your job and it's going to make you awesome. That I think everyone has this tool. So it's not like, if you're an ad agency, you're going to fire half of your people and make the other half more productive and have basically the same ad agency with half the people, because everybody gets the technology. So all the other ad agencies will also have it. If one of those ad agencies doesn't fire all their people, then they're a super ad agency, right? They're working twice as fast as you because they have the tool and stuff. So there'll be a little bit of an arms race going on where who can adopt the technology fast enough. And it's less about firing people and it's more about how do we give these people the tools that they need to be superhuman, right? So my goal is really with that in mind, like how do I help companies make the kinds of decisions to implement AI in a way that gives their workforce superpowers, that increases satisfaction at work, that takes away all that drudge work that you hate doing and amplifies your value and the things that you do really good, amplifies that. It makes you get better satisfaction at the kind of work that you're up to.
Love it. Yeah, and I totally feel it, right? Like it's going to be a 10x to 100x for everyone who really is close to delivering value. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and the work you're doing today.
Thank you, Simon. It's been delightful to be here. It's been a great conversation, and I love New Zealand. I love being here. It's the nicest country I've ever been in my life.
I think you're adding to the nicest of the whole place. Thank you so much to Edmundo Ortega. Thank you to you for listening, and thank you to everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Te Aihe Butler. If you do like what we do, please do rate and leave a review. It really does help. E noho rā.
From the Spin-Off Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz.
Does your brand have something important to say through meaningful messaging that reaches the right audience? At The Spin-Off, we work closely with our partners to create bespoke campaigns that bring value to both your brand and our audience. If you're interested in learning more about partnering with us, email Beck, that's BEC, @thespinoff.co.nz.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, Senior Writer at The Spin-Off. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network,